Recording. Christina, how are you? Welcome to the show.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. How's it going?
So good. We are super stoked to have you amidst all these the Corona crisis right now. Obviously, we are remote. I am in Campbell River, Vancouver Island, Canada. Maybe a little bit different level to where you are, which is.
I'm in Central Florida right now. I've lived in Florida for about 15 years, but gotta admit, huge fan of BC. Huge fan of BC.
And welcome, Ron. Ron, where are you coming from? California, eh?
Beautiful sunny California, Cardiff by the Sea, Solo, California.
Oh, but
Awesome.
see, you're in SoCal. I'm from NorCal. I'm from the right side of the state.
Yeah, well, we're at least on the best side of the coast.
Is that the right side or the top side or the bottom side? I'm just trying to get my geography right here. So.
Well, it's the right side, as in the correct side, up top.
Well, I guarantee you,
I'm down low.
I guarantee you it's all warmer than where I am right now, and I am very close to where hopefully we get to host the Canadian Open, the Canadian Women's Open, Shaughnessy Golf
Oh,
Club.
Shaughnessy, nice.
Yeah. You've been there? You've played there?
I have been there. I actually, years ago, dated a guy that was an aspiring golf pro, and he was a member out at Shaughnessy. So went out there, played there a couple times. Spectacular golf course, just long and slogging and very, very like quintessential Canadian golf course, if you ask me. Like super green, lots of trees, lots of like movement to the golf course and things like that. A lot of elevation changes, and yeah, it's beautiful.
It's West Coast golf at its finest, and Northern West Coast golf, like kind of similar to that San Francisco, Pacific Northwest Washington area. But yeah, rainforest, trees, and a fantastic golf course. We're really, I can't wait to get there. I've played it a bunch. So, as a caddy, it's going to be really, really exciting to kind of, this is as close as home as I'll ever get as far as a championship is concerned. So yeah, let's just talk about, the elephant in the room, the coronavirus. Let's, what's going on in Florida? It seems like you guys are a little bit more lax than the rest of, talk to me. How are you? How's life? How's your family,
Well, no, I'm doing really well. I live in Orange County, which is, basically in Orlando, and our county has implemented a shelter in place with the exception of, essentials, like whether it's grocery shopping, going to hospital, things like that. And they have deemed golf an essential sport so that people can get some exercise and things like that. The median age of people that live in Florida tends to be a bit higher than a lot of other places in the country, a lot of places in the world. And so I think for a lot of people, golf is, one reason why they come down here. And also it's one of the, it's one of the reasons for moving down here, but they also, everyone's golf obsessed over here. So it's been an interesting time. I had an exercise ban snap on me the other day. So which was great because everything's closed. And so I was going to a bunch of different stores. I went to, I was at Target, I went to Walmart, was trying to see who was open, went on Amazon, and the quickest thing I can get on Amazon Prime was like several days later. So I said, okay, well, I've got like an uber heavy strap. So I might be super buff by the time we get back to playing.
Well, yeah, I think there's a lot of girls that are in your shoes that are going to be super buff. It seems like, I don't know, Ronnie, what do you think? Everybody's Instagram account is got a new regime of workout. Exactly.
Everybody's posting their workout regimens. I know you lost a few elbows there, Christina, working out so much, but I think it's going to be a new breed of golfer next year. A lot of stronger, fitter golfers out there. We'll see what happens.
Yeah, we're also going to have a lot less hugging on tour after rounds, which I'm personally very excited about. I last year, towards the end of the season, started implementing handshakes because, one, I think it means more if you look someone in the eye and say, I genuinely enjoyed playing with you, or a good round today, as opposed to just giving, one of those half-hearted hugs or something like that. I give good-ass hugs. So when I don't get one in return, I'm always like, okay. So been doing a lot more shaking of hands, and I think nowadays I'm just gonna be like, hey, thanks, I'm happy maintaining social distancing for the length of my career from now on.
You are a great hugger. I mean, we've got paired together for 2 rounds at 13th Beach in Australia there, which we'll touch on in a few minutes. But you give every player and caddy like, come on, real hugs. You get look me in the eyes. Let's go, real hug, okay? And meaningful. We got to none of that like tap 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 onto
Yeah,
the see you
yeah.
later.
Just why bother is the way that I see it. If you want to give someone a hug, that's one thing, and I'll always hug, my friends and things like that. But if you're just going to be, half-assed about it, I'm like, dude, you know what? Just shoot me a shotgun or something like that, and we'll be tight. Like, it's all good.
Especially when we come off the golf course, we're all like sweaty and it's usually like hot and humid. Like the last thing any one of these girls wants to do is hug me as a caddy. Like, let's be serious. Let's
Well, I mean,
handshake
I
and
think we're
relax.
all suffering from the secretion of body juices and things like that, however you want to call it. Yeah, there's no reason to be mixing those fluids.
Sure. So let's keep going on Australia then. We were over there. We all started our season. What was that? Late January, early February. You come out. You have 2 top 10 finishes, which was some spectacular playing. I mean I was out there at 13th Beach. What was that? Was that some what? Can you touch on that and those wind conditions? How difficult that was?
Well, I think I was told that on the Saturday's round, the highest wind was clocked in. I think it was like 73 kilometers or something. That was like 40 to 42 miles an hour. And I think I know exactly the moment that it happened. I think it was on the first hole for my second shot because I had a ball that went, woo! But no, I one absolutely love golf in Australia. Like I have a huge affinity for it. I love the fact that you can play the ball along the ground, you can hit it up in the air, you can use the wind, you can fight the wind. Like it just causes you to use a lot more creativity as opposed to, say on the men's tour here in the States, because the technology has gotten so out of hand that it's just bomb and gouge. Whereas, for the ladies tour, it's just like, just hit it straight and then hit your hybrid, hit it straight, and then hit your 12-foot putt. Like here, it's just, you have to actually know, okay, if I want to end up close on this hole, I'm going to have to play 25, 30 feet to the left and use the slope to come in, or I have to hit something down a little bit lower and just skip it up there because there's no way you're going to be able to hold the green, even if you have like 80, 90 yards or something like that. Like it just causes you to be so much more creative. And that's one thing I love about Australian golf. And on top of that, like Brown is beautiful. There's no reason why everything has to be so lush and so green and so soft. Like the game was created to be played along the ground. And so to an extent, we've kind of gotten away from that. I mean, obviously in different climates, like, like say, it's not like you're going to ever have like a really baked out golf course when you're in BC or if you're in Washington or something like that. But, if you're somewhere where it's warm, where it's dry, and you have the ability to get those grassroots systems like nice and healthy, but nice and tight. I just love that so much because I'll sit there and I'll be like, okay, we have 130 to the flag. Am I going to hit a 9-iron? Am I going to punch an 8-iron? Am I going to chip a 7-iron? There were a couple times when I hit a 5-iron from 130 and just held it up into the wind and then just had it, trundle up about 10, 15 yards. And it's just, there's something so satisfying about being able to hit any number with any club. And that's something that I feel like has been lost a lot with modern day golf.
Well, and I'm just going to jump in there and say, as a 20, somebody who's played golf at a pretty decent level and taught as well, is it just gives you so much more. It's something that you can't teach. Your imagination's there. Like numbers, yes, it's important to have the number, but like you said, you hit a 5-iron from 130 or something, right? Like there's just this, all of a sudden this feel, this like schoolyard, thing that comes back where it's just like, there's like, the book goes out the window. Let's just get shit done here.
Absolutely.
Like let's get the ball
Absolutely.
in the hole. So to put it into perspective for Ron, who wasn't over there, and our listeners, I mean, I think after day 2, the leader was at 13 under, and I believe there was a playoff at 8 under 2 days
There
later.
was there was a 3-way playoff at 8 under. Um, Gosh, what did I do? It's so long. It feels like it was so long ago. Did I go 6 under, 1 under, 1 over, 2 under, or something like that? I don't remember exactly what I shot, but I was really disappointed with how I played over the weekend, just because I knew what I was capable of. And for me, in many regards, when the conditions get tougher, that's when I also get tougher and will hit some shots that I mean, there were a couple of shots I hit that I would, people told me like I've never seen a shot hit like that, like hitting a 5-iron about ball sack high, or taking your 9-iron, hitting it all the way up in the sky, and, utilizing, basically feeling like you're utilizing every inch of the golf course, which is something that I just absolutely love. And, I ended up walking out that week. I was pretty disappointed because I feel like I could have played a lot better, but at the end of the day, I was 3 shots out of a playoff, and I was like, wow, like, no offense, but everyone's got to get a hell of a lot better at their golf if we're going to be going backwards when it comes to the weekend in terms of a winning score.
So maybe things to see for the British Open if we ever get there this year, huh? Christina Kim atop the leaderboard and some tough windy conditions. I think I'd like to see that.
Yeah, all I know is I'm very happy with where I am at the present moment. We're talking, what, 4 or 5 months away? That's so far away. That's not even on my radar at the moment.
Sure. Okay, and so into those 2 top 10 finishes. But before that, let's talk about your Q school. You come out, you, I guess, not lose your card, but fall down in status quite a bit from being a 17-year, veteran. You have maybe some winning status because you've won on the tour before. Ron and I've got a few questions about that, and
come at me, bro.
To talk us about Q Series. And first of all, I want to know, what the hell were you doing carrying your bag on the first week of Q Series? As a caddy, I'm like, what the hell are you doing? Please.
Well, let's see. First of all, I was at Q Series because I had a horrific year. Was going through a lot of issues physically, a lot of issues emotionally, a lot of issues mentally, and was just completely drained before the summer had even completed. And was going through a ton of swing changes, and still currently am, but I've tightened up a lot of things. And I don't know, it's hard to describe. I was like, the whole season I was basically just, I felt the noose tightening the entire time. And as soon as I realized, okay, you have to go back to Q Series, my first thought was, oh shit, this is great, I get to go to Pinehurst. And then my second thought was, after I get my card, I'm going to go play Pinehurst number 2, and I'm going to go check out the Cradle. And so I got very excited, and I believe that I was pretty fortunate because I was able to go into Q Series. One, wasn't fresh out of college, clearly, look at me. Having won 3 times on the LPGA Tour, 5 times worldwide, having clinched a Solheim Cup for the United States team, having been on 3 Solheim Cups, 3-0 in singles. Like, I have all of these wonderful experiences, and I hate to brag, but those are some of the things I am actually really proud of, although I don't really acknowledge them very often. And so I felt like I had a leg up. I felt like I had a 15th club in my bag. And I'm not going to lie that for Q Series, I was just like, I hadn't been to Pinehurst in years, hadn't been to the area since, I last played in the US Women's Open in that region. And I didn't realize that Fazio had so many holes that was like 7 to 13 yards uphill. And, I was just like, hey, you know what? When I'm out on the golf course, you've been out with me before. I don't ask a lot of questions. I know what I'm doing. Half the time, it's like you'll sit there and you'll see a player who, is talking out a shot with her caddy. Her caddy gives her some information. She doesn't trust it. She mishits it. And then she turns around and starts yelling at her caddy. Like, if I do take any information on, 1, I'm grateful to it. 2, if I choose to accept it, that's on me. And then 3, if I miss the green, half the time I'm coming back with a golf club saying I'm sorry, because that wasn't the game plan. But I went in with my on my own for the first week because I was out of my damn mind and learned my lesson. And it had nothing to do with, it wasn't that I didn't believe I needed one or anything, but I just said, hey, you know what, I can do this. It's okay. Like, it's, at the end of the day, it's still just golf. And then I was like, that shit's heavy. Like, and I knew it was heavy. And I had the little bag with me, and I was just like, this. I always knew, because my father caddied for me my first 3.5 years on tour, and I've had friends caddy for me. I've had, like some of the world's best tour caddies throughout my career, but it's just like, it really is a different beast. Like, when you're having to like make different decisions and having to, think things out in a as a player in a completely different manner, it's taxing, so thankfully I was able to, get a friend to caddy for me for the second week of Q Series, and we had a ball. I actually liked course number 9 a lot better. I, made a ton of birdies, hit a lot of really good putts, and was able to play golf again, as opposed to just swinging and hitting shots. I was able to, again, use the contours of the golf course, and, instead of just having to hit darts all the time. I don't know. It's hard to describe, but that was a trying time for me. That was definitely a trying time.
Christina, as someone who's outside the ropes, you seem to go through a lot of caddies. Last season, you seemed to have a different caddy towards the end of the year quite a bit. You started off with your dad, got rid of him after a while.
Not last year, no. This was at the very beginning of my career when my father caddied for me.
Right. But then you went into Danny for a little while. But last season, it seemed like each week you were picking up a new guy. What goes into picking a caddy?
Well, one thing that goes into picking a caddy is chemistry, initially, first and foremost. If I feel like I can trust you with, because this is my life. Golf is my life. And so if I feel like I can trust your abilities, and it could, for me, again, I'm for the most part fairly easy, but in certain ways I'm very particular. Like if you, I like my irons separated, odds and evens. Don't want to going in
That's fair.
continuous order. I want someone that will not take over, because, and that's something that's difficult for a lot of people, especially since, with this being the LPGA tour, the power dynamic often changes, where, as opposed to a female being the one that's, society quotes being subservient, or, the man takes control, or this or that. I'm like, no. I'm not saying I own you, and I'm not saying that you work for me, because I always tell people whenever we work together, I say we work together, you work with me, we're partners in this. But if someone oversteps the boundaries and says, hey, like I'm walking to my ball, I'm doing all of my things in my book, I'm already checking where the wind is at, I'm feeling where the barometric pressure is, I'm trying to figure out what the humidity levels are, boom, 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 boom. And then someone comes up to me and says, okay, you've got 148 front, 159 to the flag, hit this club. That's not your place to tell me that. I'm the one that wants to guide everything. And I'll be like, okay, I got 147 to the front, 158 to the flag. If it's off by a yard or something, that's not a big issue for me. But I have great respect for people in authority, but I do not like being told what to do, especially when it comes to my craft and my work. I want someone to work with me.
Do you work together on picking the number, get the number, then you draw your own club, or how does that work?
Well, that's another thing. Don't touch my clubs before I hit them, because I'm the one that's going to be pulling them out of the bag. I've had that happen once where I was so in the zone. I had a perfect number for an 8-iron, and then someone handed me a club. I hit the 9-iron, and I saw it land 7 yards short of the flag and spin all the way off the green. So again, I'm very unique that way. There are a lot of girls that are like, hand me the club, but I'm like, no, this is part of my routine. This is part of what I do. I want to go in and I'm going to craft this shot from inception. I'm going to be the one that's going to craft it and then create it. And so when it comes to, it's, I don't know, it's hard for me. A lot of it is just a matter of, finding the right chemistry with someone. And there are some people I had great chemistry with, but, I had a couple of guys I was like, you know what, I'm not in a great place right now. I would rather you go find something better. And then maybe if I get to a point where I feel like I'm in a good enough place that I don't feel added pressure, knowing I've got a good caddy on my bag, then, we can come back to this perhaps. But, there's any number of reasons why I went through, I didn't go through that many. I had, a few. But, again, I work with whom I want to work with, and then I will work with someone for as long as I want to work with them. And I also, a few years ago, I had, outside of my father, my absolute favorite caddy, that we parted ways before the season started in 2016. And it broke my heart, because I used to always joke that I have a fear of commitment. My boyfriend that I've been with for almost 10 years might want to actually disagree with that. But I was fully committed to this caddy. And then, as we were coming into the 2016 season, we were talking about things, and, we just kind of came to the realization that he was happier staying home for now, because it's hard. It can be so hard out there, especially when you're playing, every tournament in Asia overseas. You're gone from home for 8 weeks. You're on the other side of the country for 8 weeks at the end of the year. And then all of a sudden you have to go back and do it all over again in a few months' time. While very exciting, it's something that I could never get enough of. Sometimes people, you just get physically, mentally, emotionally exhausted. Like that happens to me like at least once a year. So, I was a little, it broke my heart to have to stop working with him. But, I guess maybe ever since then I've been searching And it's, it's kind of like when you go through a breakup and you try and start getting into the dating scene again, and you're like, this is what I loved about my last relationship. Is this something that you can provide for me? And sometimes that just isn't something that is feasible.
Just looking for love in the last relationship. And no, it's nothing personal. Actually, Ron and I are both pretty new out on tour. So, we were like, yeah, I came from the assumption that it was maybe like, Christina's been out here 18 years. She's super confident in her game, which you kind of described a couple minutes ago. And it's just like, great, show up, carry the bag, give me the numbers. I know what I'm doing. I was really similar as a player as well, where it's like, you talked about reading the barometric pressure and, the wind and all that sort of stuff. Great. Awesome. Love the input, the information you gave me, super valuable. But at the end of the day, I know my pitching wedge, goes 135 full on, but this is a little downwind. I need to take it off. I need to visualize that ball flight, and I think a lot of people outside of being a player have a difficult time really visualizing what actually needs to happen out there. But at the end of the day, you are the boss. You're the one. We are working together.
Yeah,
we're all trying to achieve a similar goal here. If you're succeeding, I'm succeeding. We're both succeeding. But it's at the end of the day, yes, Christina, player, you're hitting the shot. Would you agree with that?
Yes, to an extent. I firmly believe that sometimes there is such a thing as too many cooks can spoil the broth.
Absolutely.
And sometimes that number's two. For me, there are times, when I was in Australia with Duncan, there were times when I would just do my number. I would just grab a club, hit it, and then we would just keep walking and then continue our conversation. I don't always need input on every single shot. When when Duncan was on, I was very lucky to have my boyfriend Duncan on the bag with me while we were in Australia. And one thing I love about him is he's so good around the greens. And so around the putting green, I'll ask, for a read. That's about it. Or there were maybe a handful of times in the 2 weeks where I said, do you like the 8 or do you like the 7? And, as opposed to, and that's another thing is for me, if I'm between two clubs, it's not like I'm gonna be like, well, do you like a hard 7 or a soft 8? I'm not stupid.
Sure.
So if I sit there and I'm like, do you like the 7 or the 8? I just want someone to be like, I like the 7 or I like the 8. Not like, well, if you hit the 7, you have to make sure that you hit it soft. And I'm like, what is it? It's a difference. It's the same number. It's not like I'm going to sit there and try and hit it 15 yards further with a hard 7 where it should have been a hard 8. It's one of those things where it's like sometimes for me, because I do in many regards overanalyze a lot of things. I do overthink a lot of things. I just like to be secure in knowing that I have as much information as possible, but that's within my constraints. And then if someone were to add something in, I'll just sit there. I'd be like, are you high? What do you, obviously it's a hard 8 or a soft 7. What do you mean make sure I hit the 7 soft? What are you talking about?
I know what I'm doing. Thanks very much. Yeah.
Yeah. And then there are some players that, they need to be, I don't want to say babied because it's not that. They have a different communication style and they have different needs. And, that tends to be something that's a lot more common on tour where players, I don't know if they feel like I need to get my money's worth out of this caddy, so he needs to talk to me about every single shot. Whereas I'm like, what'd you do for dinner last night? It's more, there's so much more to a caddy's job than giving you numbers. You have to have that sense of confidence, knowing that under the gun, if you need them. My big thing is I don't want much from you. The few times I need something from you, you better have your shit right. And
Sure.
I got to trust that you're going to have your shit right. Even if it's 2 times in a tournament, I need to get the information correctly. And if we can do that, I will have all the faith in the world with you. But at the same time, I need to be able to have someone that I can converse with, but not too much. And it's there are all these little things. And, again, I understand that I'm very unique in many regards. I can talk someone's ear off if I choose to, but I can also just go dead quiet as well and be just as happy. I don't need someone to be like, are you okay? I'm like, yeah, dude, I just had the monkey playing the cymbals in the back of my mind. I'm good.
Awesome. Well, let's switch gears here just a little bit. Thanks for that insight. As an aspiring second-year caddy, I appreciate all that information. And I'm actually going to paraphrase you here from a podcast we listened to from you maybe a year or two ago. I mean, you're approaching your 18 years on the LPGA tour. I guess you kind of dubbed yourself the last dinosaur, if my quote is correct. You know, you're essentially halfway through your career, and what I mean by that is, if you look on the you know, I'm just going off the men's tour here, you're kind of in your prime, and even though you're coming off of you know, your Q school resurgence, you've got you seems like you're playing well. And can you explain moving forward to Ronnie and I about how you look at the second stage of your career in your prime? As far as I'm concerned, you're mature, you know your game, you know what you want in a caddy, you got a 10-year relationship in Duncan, who I got to meet in Australia. Please hit us, go.
Yeah, I'm okay. Yeah, like you are right, where I do feel like I'm at the halfway point of my career. I don't necessarily subscribe to a lot of the, you know, societal norms. I'm in an industry where I'm my own boss, or I am, you know, if you want to look at it that way, I'd like to think I'm more of a work partner with my caddy, but some players like to view it as being the boss, and it's like employer employee. I'd like to think that if we can work, you know, in beautiful sequence together, that we can both achieve greatness. I have no real desire to settle down. I love the vagabond lifestyle that I have. Golf has provided me with so many incredible opportunities all across the globe. I've met some amazing people, have eaten some of the most incredible food on this planet. And it's just something that I'm passionate about. I knew when I was like 14, 15 years old, I wanted to play golf for the rest of my life. I didn't know until I was 16 and a half, almost 17, that you could make money doing this shit. You know, honest to God, I had no, when I was a junior, my dad would traipse through the golf course with a tripod and huge clunky camcorder and film every tournament that I was in. So, you know, we flipped over to what is now the ANA Inspiration, and Dottie Pepper's on the 71st hole, which is a par 3, number 17, and she takes a swing and like slams her club down and goes, "Damn it, Dottie." And at 2 points, two things happened simultaneously. One, my first thought was, holy shit, we found someone else's feed. Are they watching my tournaments? And two, holy shit, I could say holy shit because that lady just swore. And so I honestly, I didn't know that you could make money playing golf until I was much older than, you know, a lot of these girls that, you know, had these aspirations of being on the LPGA tour and stuff. I was just like, I love golf, you know what I mean? I was like Ricky Bobby. I'm like, I just want to drive fast and turn left on occasion. And so for me, you know, I just like to live moment to moment. You know, even saying day to day is a little overwhelming to me because I've spent so much time, you know, battling, whether it was my depression or, you know, battling, you know, my weight or just anything about me that, you know, it's sometimes you get so far ahead of yourself or you dwell so deep into the past, you lose the moment that you're in. And so for me, the last couple of years, it's all been about just appreciating where I am. I read an article in, I don't know, I think it was NBC News had posted an article where it was saying, you know, you can live a happier life if you can find something that makes you feel awestruck every single day. And some days it's, you know, watching a series of clouds that blow by and you're like, you will never see that same exact cloud pattern ever again. Or, you know, you can just, when a couple days ago, the dragonflies emerged for the first time this season. And then just seeing them all just take flight and just kind of moving around and getting down and dirty with one another. You know, it's just, there's any number of things in this world that can bring you awe. And I think that if we're able to witness those, acknowledge them, appreciate them, like it'll do so much good for us because that means that we're here right now. You know, anxiety and excitement chemically are so similar that they're in essence opposite sides of the same coin. And for me, anxiety versus excitement, it's just a matter of perspective.
Now I'm about to hand the mic off to old Ronnie here because I feel like I'm hogging it, but I have one more question.
I'm the one hogging it. Are you kidding me?
Well, but we want you to hog it. This is the purpose of that. But just, you know, regarding that, you seem at a really great stage in life, and I think we can all sit here and have the agreement that the older you get, the more confident, the more comfortable you get with not living in those past situations and hopefully keeping a presence. But we talked a few weeks ago, Christina, and I just want to get your, I was talking about, I posted a photo. I like to read a lot and I practice a lot of meditation and about being present. And this sort of stuff, which just kind of reminded me of what you were talking about. And please tell me about the book that you recommended me when I posted about Dan Millman, The Way of the Peaceful Warrior. And since I've downloaded this book on your recommendation, because, you know, I was waiting for the hardcover copy, edition from Christina Kim of Dan Millman, Body, Mind, Mastery. And just, you know, about, you know, I've looked into the excerpts of that book, but, just about being present and as an athlete and, you know, in this moment instead of those anxious future, young person mentality.
Well, two things. One, I actually bought a hardcover, an actual paperback actually, but I did purchase you a physical copy of the book because I really was not going to be willing to part with my own personal copy. but I'm glad that you did download it. That's fantastic. Yeah, it's the book Body, Mind, Mastery by Dan Millman is a book that I try and read at least 3 times a year. I actually read it on the flight over to Australia. I read it from going from the East Coast to the West Coast, finish it in a couple of hours. But it's just a remarkable book that just that's the thing. It's general sports. It's not golf specific. It's not. It dabbles in, but it doesn't have to be like a sports psychology book. I think it's just a wonderful book for life in general, because we get so caught up, you know, whether we're, you know, in this rat race, whether we're on the hamster wheel, whatever it is, we're so focused on our, you know, long-term goals, which, you know, obviously you have to have and be cognizant of them. But, you know, you're so worried about this. You're so worried about this deadline you have to meet. You're so worried about, you know, what's going to happen next week. You're so worried about what's going to happen tomorrow. You're supposed to go out on a date tomorrow, you know, that all of a sudden you realize like time passes you by, like, boom, another year has gone by and you either haven't learned shit or you haven't been able to absorb anything good because you're so focused on everything else, or you're dwelling in the past, or whatever it may be. That this book has been just so wonderful for me to teach myself how to be kinder to myself. And that was something that I struggled with a lot, when I was, sort of at my young prime of my career and things like that. And so I think that by virtue of reading this book, I was able to, forgive myself. I was able to be kinder to myself. I was able to ask myself questions, and I was able to learn that, it really is true. And it's something that I believe in now. You can take one step back to take 2 steps forward, and understand that, like Tiger, was always saying, you just trust the process. And as long as you have your heart in the right place, your mind in the right place, in your firm belief in what you're going to do, you can get there. It's not necessarily going to be easy. I can't promise it's going to happen overnight, but as long as you have that unwavering faith in yourself, then anything is possible. But no participation trophies.
Sounds like I'm with you on there. We're both millennials, so yeah, screw that. It's the Gen Z or whatever they're called now. But for our listeners, we'll put that in the show notes. I have no idea how to do that, but I heard Tim Ferriss say it all the time. So please, Ronnie, intervene here, buddy. Give her.
Well, I'm kind of curious. I've been a big fan of yours, Christina, for a long time. My first LPGA tournament was 1979, Rancho Park, Los Angeles. Laura Baugh, Jan Stephenson's day. But I followed you your whole time. You're very colorful out there. Love the Kango hat you wear all the time. You wear it backwards. That's even cool. But I kind of wonder, you still wear tap shoes out there. You're one of the only few golfers that wear metal spikes.
No, I'm the only one.
The only.
I'm the only one.
Even on the men's tour, I think you're only out there. I can see you coming from par 5 away. I can hear you coming. I just love your style and just the way you're very colorful out there. PXG, wearing the hat backwards. Is they obviously allow you to wear it backwards, because I know Casey got in trouble a little bit wearing his cap backwards in San Francisco last year. It's just kind of wondering, where do you get your fashion style from?
It's one of those, just draw from a hat kind of thing. No, I don't know. I like what I like, and I don't have any room to give a single shit as to whether anyone else likes it or not. Checking the pockets, was trying to find one, could not find one.
I say the best part about not caring.
I mean, it's all I know. I mean, I think I was 12 years old was maybe the last time I actually cared what anyone thought of me that wasn't like family or really, really close to me. But I don't know. I've always had a knack for bright, colorful things. I've always had a knack for fun patterns. And for me, a lot of it is just the fact that I don't like wearing a baseball cap because the brim, like, it'll look straight in a mirror, but when I look up, it'll look all kinked off to the side. And so for me, I'm just like, you know what, just, you know, take a Kangol hat, flip it on backwards. I'll occasionally pop it forward when the winds are getting really, really bad, but it's just, I don't know. People say it's like a signature look. I don't think of it as a signature look. I'm like, it's like, if some people are super comfortable in sweatpants, wear sweatpants. I don't care. But this is something that provides me comfort, keeps my hair out of my face. I went through a period of time, in like 09, 2010, where I wore a freaking fedora. And like I had instead of a chain wallet, I had a chain yardage book cover. Like I was just rocking what I wanted to rock, like I don't care. But
get a bandana.
Yeah, I did have a bandana as well until I realized that unless you spray sunscreen along your scalp when you're doing pigtails, that shit gets sunburnt real easily. So that's one reason why that went away.
And the pigtails are cool too. I see you sporting that all the time. You can see yourself coming a mile away, and it's just very cool to be an individual
that, Rod.
there, not with all the logos looking like a NASCAR driver.
There's no doubt she's got her own style, and I've played 4 rounds with Christina now, in less than a year, which is awesome. But I'll tell the listeners that she's got the fans too, so it doesn't matter where you are on the golf course. Little people, big people, they're all kind of following Christina. So just I guess 17-year veteran, colorful out there. One thing I really noticed is how appreciative you are as well. I'm paraphrasing you. I said, man, Christina, you got, they love you. They're like, if they knew me, they wouldn't love me. I think that's one of your quotes, but I don't know. You seem pretty good to us, inside the ropes and on camera as well. So, you just talk a little bit about your fans, how much they mean to you, especially in this journey, and seeing how you're only halfway through it.
Yeah, no, I love all of my fans, and I'm not going to lie, I love my haters too, because they can drive you in ways you didn't think possible, outside of just crazy. They can drive you to further want to improve, whether it's, out of spite or I don't know. I try to avoid being spiteful, but, I know that when it comes to things that I'm passionate about and things that I really care about and really, really like, I'm all in. I'm a huge baseball fan. I mean, it took me 30 years to get there, and it took me getting on the pitch at in San Francisco, and meeting a lot of the players to actually, for me, I need that sort of interactive experience and someone to actually root for, as opposed to just these, blobs on a screen or something like that. So because that's how I am whenever I interact with my fans, to the best of my abilities, I always try and have a conversation. I ask how they're doing. If I ask how they're doing, it's because I want to know how they're doing. I'm not one of those people that's like, hey, how's it going, as I'm walking away. Like, if I ask you how you are, like, you're free to tell me whether it's good or not good. And so for me, I just think, I don't know, this is really weird for me because I don't do well with like praise and stuff. I'm like, I'm just some dude, like, I don't know, I'm just living my life. And my parents raised me well to care for other people. I'm a Pisces, so maybe that's also one reason why I'm very empathetic. And I genuinely care about people. So I try to care about people without judging people, because Lord knows I've spent my entire life being judged every way under the sun. And, I can choose to allow it to affect me in a negative way or a positive way, or, I used to take a lot of negative energy and try and turn it into something positive. Now I don't even bother with the negative energy. Like, I don't even, it's like someone tweets something at me or, says something about me. I'm like, okay, bro, like, cool story, I guess, but you're not having any sort of like a direct impact on my life. I'm probably still going to go and get a good night's rest, get up in the morning, go play golf, cook, read, do things that I'm passionate about. And, I hope you have a good day.
Speaking of that, when we're outside the ropes and you're walking from hole to hole, how much of the fans do you hear? Do you hear us like cheering you on? And when you have a bad hole, come on, come on. You paying attention to any of the fans between holes?
Depends, because if I'm coming across a cart path, I am simultaneously deafened by my own spikes, as well as doing my very, very damnedest not to slip and fall. So a lot of times my focus will go to things outside of that. But at the same time, I don't know. it's a little strange because I personally, it's hard to say, like, when it's Solheim Cup, it's completely different because, the crowd ends up becoming a 13th member of the team. But when I'm
Right.
just in a normal golf tournament, I don't need someone to tell me you got this or come on, let's go or something like that. I appreciate it, but for me, although they're done in different ways, I sometimes look at it as the same sort of thing as when those dudes scream mashed potatoes. Like I just sit there and I'm like, I appreciate that you're supporting me, and I can tell you're supporting me because you're out there on the golf course with me. That's more than enough for me, So I'm like, I got this. Like, I'm not going to try and mess this hole up on purpose. And that's another thing, it's like when you talk to people and they're, if they're, it's always well intentioned and everyone's always trying their best, but sometimes, and Casey, I'm sure you get this too, when someone's just like, oh man, like I really thought you were going to make birdie on 14, but like you walked away with bogey, instead of birdie. And I'm just like, yeah, I didn't mean to do that.
You know,
How do
it's
you, those
like,
like these weird things, like, how do you respond? Like, yeah, it happened. Like, I'm sorry if that disappointed you. Your disappointment is not going to change the score on the whole. And I'm already doing my best to be beyond that. So, for me, again, I try and focus on the present, and they'll be like, it's like, I actually got a phone call. I was over at Cypress Point about 2 weeks ago and called John McGannon, who's the head of all tour departments with PXG. And, I was just like, wanted to give him a call, and I was just like, hey, John, how's it going? And he's like, yeah, I'm doing really well, really good. Like, what's new with you? And I'm like, oh, nothing. I'm just driving down the highway. He's like, you were on Cyprus like 20 minutes ago. What do you mean nothing new has happened? I'm like, oh, I'm so focused on the present, like at this exact moment. That was one of the greatest experiences of my life, but I'm here right now. I'm trying to be here with you. So yeah, sorry. No, Cyprus is great.
yeah.
So for me, a lot of times, it's just trying to be focused on the moment. And, sometimes, don't need to talk sometimes, I guess is the best way to put it.
Well, sure, it never gets old walking to the first tee, but as a pro golfer, when you go into the first tee, all amateurs, no matter if there's two people in the crowd, a little nerve-wracking going to the first tee. What's it like as a pro? There's a crowd there. They announce your name, Solheim Cup champ and winner. What is it? Is it still a ever off feeling for you?
I would say, again, I don't like praise. So when someone's sitting there like listing like my career and stuff, I'm like, my ball could already be up in the air right now. Like if you just said my name, like, I don't know. It's kind of weird, but at the same time, like I'm very appreciative of it, and it's really, really cool. But sometimes, like I just sit there and it's like we have a couple of tournaments where you're like, oh, okay, the announcer this week, he must have officiated boxing matches back in the day because they're like so loud and like so ostentatious about it, and I'm like, bro, I'm just trying to hit the fairway. Like, I get that this is your moment, but
That's his
sometimes
moment.
yeah, but at the same time, I'm like, you can pick different moments, like maybe say something quippy and funny after we all hit. That would be awesome. I think that would be great, because then that way we can take, a 7-second introduction and not have to stretch it out to like 25, 26, because that could be more anxiety inducing, if you
Right.
ask me. So just, you still get the butterflies because, if you don't, you need to look into a different line of work. Like there's just like, because the thing is, you can only do so much. You can do your best to prepare yourself to go out there and shoot 54, and then life happens or whatever it is, or you can hit skip off a rock or something like that, or anything can happen. So that's part of the beauty of this game, is nothing is guaranteed. But if you don't feel butterflies, like you really should be looking into doing something that does cause you to be excited.
If you're not in the hunt, do you guys ever make little bets, turning the back nine, going out there with your playing partner to kind of juicing it up a little bit?
I think the guys have a tendency of doing that more than the ladies do. I've tried doing things like that in practice rounds, but no one really picks up on it. I'm like, dude, let's just do like $10 birdies or something, or $5 birdies. Let's do $1 bird, like a quarter, like one little copper penny. Just something.
As a caddy, I would get in on that action for sure. Now, this sounds like a little bit of side betting. This sounds like a beautiful thing here.
Yeah, no, and I think it could be fun, but at the same time, I think, I mean, there's so many different personality types that there's some that just feel like they are so focused on what they're doing, that they don't really want to pay attention to what anyone else is doing, I guess.
Do you gamble off the tour when you're playing just in the backyard with your buddies?
Yeah, I mean, I'll go out there and we'll do like $20 Nassau's, or we'll do like 15, 15, 20, like front nine, back nine overall. And then my friend Dave Beccarella actually introduced us to a new game. It's called Quarters, where, originally it's like depending on however many are on the team, like you flip coins, and then whoever ends up on heads ends up on the same team. Whoever ends up on tails ends up in the same team. You go and you play and you do it on every single hole. So it's, a slight variation of like wolf, let's say, because
Sure.
you're left with a chance of who's going to flip what. But I turned it on its head and I said, okay, how about this? We're all going to play the hole, and then after everyone putts out, then we'll flip. Because then you're just like sometimes you're just completely screwed, and it just gives it a little bit of, I don't know, it gives it like a light fun feeling or something like that. But yeah, I mean, it's for me, I joke about it, but there is some truth to it. Tournament golf is so different for me that if I'm not actually playing in a tournament, I'm like a 6 handicapper, and I'm okay with that. Like it's okay. And sometimes I'm a 6 handicapper in a tournament, and you know what? Sometimes that's okay too. Like I turn into a different beast when I'm on the golf course, like in an actual tournament round.
Well,
I can't remember. Go ahead.
Twisting the rules around a little bit by flipping the coin. When you're on the course, you seem to know the rules pretty well, and there's quite a few girls out there that call for rules officials all the time when it should be pretty much, I mean, a lot of people know what the rules are. I know you're playing for a lot of money out there and you want to get it right the first time, but it seems to hold up play quite a bit. And I've seen you before out there. You kind of explain it to the other girls and they still ask for a second opinion. Where do you see your career going? I kind of see you being a rules official when this is all said and done. Do you like that role? Helping.
Girl, are you high?
You don't want to be an official out there, telling people what to do, where to go?
No, everyone should have the ability to self-police themselves. I know that there are certain instances when, getting a calling in for a rules official can be beneficial, because if you don't know all of your options, you might be able to say, what are all of my options? What can I do from here within the confines of the rules? No, for me, I just sit there and I'm like, hey, you know what? Like, like let's say if you got an office job, you're a clerk at a law firm or something like that, HR provides you with a binder with, these are the rules of the office, like no sending personal emails from your business account, no harassment of any kind with any other employees here, if you're going to bring a lunch, eat your own and don't eat other people's, whatever, and so, although I've been doing this since I was 12 years old, this is my office. And so I look upon the rules of golf in the same manner, because this is where I make my living. And so by knowing the rules, you know what you can and cannot do. And it's hard though when, you've been doing, like, I'll never grow up. I've been doing the same shit since I was 12. Like, I'm just a big kid. And I think that sometimes it's hard for people to realize that this is still their office where rules do still apply. But, sometimes if you don't know what the rules are, and if you're able to gain an option completely within the confines of the rules, and that's one reason why you call officials.
Is it mandatory that some of do the rookies have to ride around rules officials a few hours a week or so? Do they have to, a little quota they have to clear?
Seeing how my rookie year was back in the Mesozoic era, I don't really know what they're doing now because everything changes, but I do believe you have to do a ride around with a rules official. But it's not like you're going to be sitting there and as a rookie, you're sitting in the passenger seat and the rules official sitting there doing flashcards with you. Like it's,
Right,
you can just be asking questions. You can be witnessing other rulings take place, things like that. But it's like, the rules book is vast. And then the book of decisions and interpretations is just, it's ginormous. So I don't think there's any amount of time that you would be able to spend with a rules official in a single sitting and be able to absorb and retain all of the rules of this game.
Of course.
You've played in a couple different eras now, Christina. I mean, your early 2000s to, you've gone through the Sormstam, the Ochoa, and now where we are in the current state, 2020. Can you talk about a little bit of differences of eras from then to now, if there is a difference? Yeah, I'm not sure. What do you have for the audience?
Yeah, I mean, my early 2000s, you had your Annika, you had Meg Mallon, Beth Daniel, who were some of the most remarkable players I've ever come across. And Meg and Beth, they were both super instrumental for me my first couple years on tour when I was still at that, young. I was 18 when I got on tour, like that young, malleable age where you can have impressions put upon you. And so they just taught me how to, in essence, be a professional. There's so much more to being on the LPGA tour than hitting a golf ball. It's about being a decent human being. It's about doing the right thing. It's about talking to people, asking how they're doing, legitimately caring about people. It's about helping other people. And so they were just hugely impactful to me. In the 2010s, like you said, even in the, early 2000s, we still had Lorena. I played on what is now the Symetra Tour, and got my card the same year that Lorena Ochoa got her card. And it was, back then they only gave out 3 cards, and she was number 1, and she beat me out for Player of the Year and Rookie of the Year by like $240 or something like that. And, so I remember, the first time I ever met Lorena was when I was 15 years old. It was my first international tournament. Went down to Mexico. I filled up on tacos like you wouldn't believe. Like, those street tacos were ridiculous. And she like won the Mexican women's amateur for, it might have been the 6th time in a row or something like that, maybe 8. I can't remember. And I just remember meeting her, and she was just so gracious and so kind and so hospitable. And she may or may not have introduced me to the beautiful thing that is a michelada, maybe.
Ah, Clamato
And
juice, invented in Canada. I'm just gonna interrupt there. Just micheladas are beautiful things. Sorry, keep going.
and she taught me in many ways how to be more graceful. Yeah, this is me graceful, by the way. Like, this is after years of observation. And the one thing that I always found so remarkable about her was the fact that she gave every dime that she earned on the golf course to her foundation.
Incredible.
She came from a good family. Love her family. Had the biggest crush on her brother when he was caddying for her. Oh my goodness. And she gave tirelessly. She never stopped. And so that was something that I always found inspiring. And my last LPGA win was the 2014 Lorena Ochoa Invitational presented by Banamex. And that whole week, I just remember thinking how lucky I was to be playing, in Lorena's tournament, and walking down the fairway every single moment. I was just trying to be in a moment of zen and just be like, what would Lorena do? What would Lorena do? And it proved fruitful, because I hit some ridiculous shots. Because she was honestly she was like a female Sevi. Like, the creativity that this girl had, like, was just off the charts. And I honestly don't think it's something that I'll ever see again, because Annika she was just a money making machine, and she was so good. But it was just something that was like so simple and almost boring, if you will, which when you're
Sure.
simple and boring on the golf course, you're going to rack up a ton of money. Because if you just know, okay, I'm going to hit it here, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that, I'm going to make the putt. Like, there's nothing wrong with simple, boring golf. But Lorena had this flair to her. And every now and again, you'd see like one shot that goes way offline, or a super errant shot. And you sit there and you're just like, you're licking your own chops, wanting to see her and how she would recover. And so she just had this excitement about her that I honestly don't think I'll ever see again.
Well, it sounds like that you had some good let's call it mentorship then when you kind of came out to the tour. Do you find yourself as a veteran now, with the roles reversed, and taking it upon yourself to mentor some of the girls coming up on the LPGA?
I don't know. It's kind of hard to say. I don't know if I would consider myself a mentor. I'm sure there's some of the younger girls on tour that would consider me that, but I just like, the same thing I just say, I'm just some dude, I'm like, I've gone through this. I've made like every decision in life. I've messed up the vast majority of them. but I've learned from them. And due to the fact that I've learned from a lot of these mistakes, I think it would be beneficial if, I just told you my experiences. I'm not telling you what to do, not telling you what is right, what is wrong. I'm just saying this is what I learned through going down a path that I went down on. If this is something you're considering, at least, get the Cliff Notes or the, Spark Notes, or, do the Google or whatever it is that kids do these days, and just look at, what your options are. But yeah, I mean, every year I have, at least one or two rookies that I try and not take under my wing, but just, just hang out with. Because your first few years, I was very lucky. My father was my caddy on tour for my first few years out there. And, I made a lot of really good, really quick friendships as well. But I always had my dad that I could go back to at the end of the day, and he was my biggest supporter, still is to this day. And, when you're starting out your professional career and you're by yourself, that can be scary. So I'm like, hey, you want to go grab drinks? Like, let's grab drinks. I'm not going to drink anything, but I'll sit there and watch you, or I'll sit there and talk with you about this. Do you want to go get dinner? Do you want to go to the movies? Do you want to go shopping? Like, do you just want to do something so that you're not sat at home, sitting there staring at the ceiling, wondering why you missed your third cut or this or that, whatever, because, again, not being in the present can be so detrimental to people's, mental and physical health. So I don't know how to answer that.
I want to tell my Christina Kim story right now, and we've never discussed this, but well, we had a slight discussions, but just to show how impactful, you just never kind of know what what comes from a meeting or a message or anything from anybody around the way. And not saying that this is made the course of my life a little bit different, but about 5 years ago, I received a message from the Christina Kim on Instagram, and I thought it was so cool. I was like, man, I've been in golf my whole life. I've been following Christina Kim my whole life. I don't know how you came along my Instagram page, but you're like, you should meet my friend Tiff Joe. You looks like you're into surfing and golf, and like my friend is like so into surfing and golf. So I remember this. I look up Tiff Joe, and we start chatting a little bit on Instagram. We both have the surf fever. We chat about it all the time inside the ropes. It's kind of like when you have the sickness, you have the sickness.
Oh yeah.
Moving forward, when I came down to caddy, I mean, I have a really good friend, Ryan Smith, on tour, but I was kind of like, how do I get a bag? The confidence of just having talked to Christina Kim and Tiff Joe through a little bit of social media over a few years. I was like, you know what? I'm just going to get in my car and drive down to the tour. And then when we got paired in Ohio, Toledo, I think, yeah.
You were with Louise, or were you with Jenny?
I was with Jenny, yeah. Jenny from New Jersey on for the rest of the year. And you just started, being inquisitive and asking me some questions. And I was like, okay, Christina, you remember about 5 years ago when you sent a guy a message on Instagram, a surfer guy? You looked, your eyes must have been this fucking big, and you slapped me across the chest. You're like, no fucking way! And that was a really cool moment for me, and just a really good story that I've told quite a few people over the years. And so I just want to say, you just never know what a message turns into, and where you find yourself in life, and who the people you come across. So thanks for sending that message, Christina.
Yeah, I remember. I'm trying to remember why. Oh, was it maybe the Canadian tour posted something about you or something like that? And I was like, bruh, you surf? I'm like, I got another bro who surfs, like, and does the golf thing. You guys should like become friends and stuff. That's so funny. That's so funny. I do remember when I smacked you after all those years.
We haven't been on the waves, but Tiff and I keep talking about it. So I think 2020 is the year if we ever get a sense of normalcy back. But anyway, I thought that was a cool story, and we've never actually talked about it. So I just wanted to share with the listeners.
I love it.
Ronnie, how you doing over there, buddy? What else do you have for Christina? I'm getting close to the end of my questions here.
Well, I know Christina's been living out of a suitcase for quite some time, from a van to a hotel, and now she stepped up to Airbnbs. And I know you love to cook, but in a recent podcast you said you wanted to go on a hunting trip just to kind of see the kill from the start to the finish. Casey's a big hunter up there in Canada, So talk a little bit about that. Do you really want to go out there and shoot something, or you just want to see it happening and see it from start to finish?
I invite you and Duncan up to Canada, just so you know, okay?
All right, sounds good. No, I think, I mean, growing up, you're never told this is a cow, this is a pig. You're always told this is a steak, or this is beef, or this is a pork chop, or something like that. And so there's this like almost sterile sense of, okay, this is meat, I will consume this, blah 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 blah. Whereas if you were to go and actually um, stand there, witness a live animal, living, breathing, doing its thing, and then you have to undergo the pressures of, killing this animal, hopefully with, with proper training and everything, killing it swiftly so that the animal doesn't suffer, dressing the animal, going through the whole process, hanging it up, curing it, whatever, 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 and then being able to cook it and put it on a plate. Would you be able to consume it? When I was in New Zealand a couple, almost 3 years ago now, 2.5 years ago, I was out fishing with Duncan and, one of his friends and a former caddy of mine. And we were, just out fishing on the beach and having a grand old time, whatever, just, flinging out the bait, reeling nothing in. All of a sudden I get this big tug and I was like, I think I got something, and I mean, I've fished a couple of times, and the first time I ever fished, I thought that I had like hooked onto like a monster truck tire, because it was so hard to get the thing out of the water, and it was a fish about the size of my hand. Like no concept of like the strength of fish, and so it was a really strong fish, and I was like, okay, like, and you're learning, because you're on the beach, you're learning how to reel in with the waves so that you don't like loosen the hook and this and that. And I'm just like, it's really fascinating, and just, the process of everything. And then out comes this like 4-foot long rig shark, which, Duncan was over the moon. He's like, this is so awesome. Like, these make for great eating, this, that, whatever, whatever. I was like, okay, cool, this is fun. And then his friend Pete pulls out the knife. And at that point, I realized what was about to happen. So I dropped the rod and took off. I was like, I don't want to witness this. Like, it's got eyes, and it's a living thing. I don't, and we ended up having tacos that night, and I could barely keep it down. Like, it was a big impact on the end. So since then, we've gone fishing quite a bit then, and now I can take live shrimp and hook it on, and then catch a fish, unhook the fish, kill it if I have to, set it free if it's, undersized or whatever else. And so I think that for me to be able to fully appreciate food in general, I think it would be very important to witness every phase of life. Because that way, I can come into a meal having a much grander appreciation for the life that was lost in order for me to consume. Because for me, food is life. If you don't eat food, you die, you starve, you die. And so a friend of mine who was a personal trainer of mine and a nutritionist of other people, because I wouldn't listen to him, told me, food is life, because he was involved with a woman who suffered from an eating disorder, and she was basically killing herself from the side. And so that really struck with me. And so, I just want to be able to have a full appreciation. There's no morbid curiosity, because just talking about it does leave me a little antsy about it. But I think it is very important to understand what goes into the consumption of the foods that you eat. And so, for me to be able to go out there, and whether I'm getting, wild venison or wild boar or something like that, and to be able to, who knows if I'll even be able to pull the trigger. Partially because I'm not very.
I will intervene on that note. The pulling the trigger part. My brother and I, we got 4 deer this last off season, and that'll feed my family until next hunting season. But if you want to talk about pressure, okay, on the first hole of the U.S. Open, or coming down the 72nd hole when you're in contention, when you've got a deer or a live animal in your scope from, it doesn't matter what the distance is, you think you're like, savvy, and you've talked yourself into being ready to take this animal, and you're taking it with all the respect in the world. You're taking it to go through the process and, put the food into your body, the consumption, the nutrients. Man, you've never had your heart start ticking. Like I'm telling you, Christina, my first time, I'll never forget it. All of a sudden, it's just like, you know, it's a
Yeah, but
serious thing that you have to like control, you know, your nerves, and it's not a big target, you know, and
absolutely, the gravity of the situation is
wow,
something that would be very, yeah. But I think that it's, again, I think that it's so important because it's about more than, you know, having a stake. You know, you have to truly understand and learn to appreciate that this animal's life was lost so that you can continue going on. And you know, I think that to be able to properly honor that animal, you have to at least be willing to go there. Again, I don't know if I'll pull the trigger solely for the fact that if I'm going to shoot the animal, I want it to be a kill shot because I don't want the animal to suffer. And so that being said, I have to work on the whole shooty part a bit more. Um, you know, I can shoot a handgun from, you know, 10, 20 yards and hit the bullseye every time, but it's different when you've got the everything going on there. But you know, it's just, if I don't feel like I'll be able to actually get the kill shot, I'm going to pass it on to someone else because I'm not going to sit there and let the animal suffer just because I want to be able to say that I shot something.
it's a neat skill to have, and it's really grounding because you get to spend some significant time in nature, which you know,
Mm-hmm.
sometimes we lose touch of, especially when we're traveling the tours of America that are situated in such populous concrete jungles. But if you and Duncan are ever serious, I more than welcome you up to the unpopulated place of Canada, and we can go talk about putting some meat on the plate. So very
All
cool.
right, sounds great. Because Duncan's a hunter. He is a
Hmm.
hunter, and that's part of the reason why I'm at least somewhat inclined to at least attempt this venture. Because if he wasn't a hunter, then I'd be like, well, I can't do this. You can't do this. What are we doing? But no, he does enjoy hunting to be able to provide for the family and things like that. So yeah, we'll definitely take you up on it.
All right, we might not get too many off weeks once we get going back here, but you know, this is the offer's always on the table. Um, Christine, I got kind of one more thing, and I'm not sure how Ron's sitting here, but you know, as a veteran out there, what would you tell your rookie self coming out on tour? You know, from where you are at this point in life in your career, that young girl coming out of not even college, but as a 17-year-old trying to turn pro, what advice would you have for her?
I would tell myself if I could go back in time, back to the Stone Age, I would tell myself, first and foremost, because this is something I write whenever I autograph my book or whatever, I always write, enjoy the ride. And that's something that is one of my mottos I live and die by. And I would also tell myself that your self-worth is not directly tied to your score. Because there were times when, you know, it's like, because, you know, we would all have a couple of, you know, like slumps mid-season or something like that, because you're just playing so much golf that you sit there and you're just like, I must be a horrible person. You know, I just shot 74. Like I'm a bad person. Whereas nowadays, you know, I mean, it's like, if I do have a bad score, like, yeah, by all means, when you're in it, get mad, get past it, focus on the next. And like, I'll finish around and be like, okay, well, no, nobody died. Like it's okay. And I would also tell myself that one, it's okay to not be okay, because refusing to acknowledge your emotions is going to be at a far greater detriment to you as a human being than actually admitting that there's something you need, that you're, you know, that you know, you sit there and you think, oh, I'm weak if I sit there and acknowledge there's something wrong with me. It's like, no, it takes a lot of strength to acknowledge that you need assistance and that you can't always do everything by yourself. And I would also tell myself, just, you know, how would I say it, like, you know, friends are so important, but just be wise with whom you spend your time, you
Mm.
know, because, you know, there's a, you know, the older I get, the more I realize, you know, like I've got a couple of friends I've, like, you know, not spent as much time with. You know, it's like, okay, well, she had a baby and she got married, and those are like, you know, garlic to a vampire kind of things for me. But you know, I have a couple other friends that, you know, we just kind of morphed into different human beings, and priorities that are very high up on my list, like empathy and asking how you're doing and actually giving a shit how you're doing, don't necessarily, aren't necessarily as important to other people sometimes. And that's totally okay. Like I understand that everyone's priorities are set differently and everyone's desires and wants are set differently. Someone might just want to eat sushi all day, and someone else might want to go and just buy all the Louboutins in the world. And that's totally okay. For me, I'm more into how your heart is doing, how your emotions are, and things like that. And so, I would just say, just be careful who you invest your time in. I mean, because at the end of the day, you're stuck with just you. And if you put all of your heart and all of your energy into, one or two people, and then heaven forbid, I hope it never does happen, but if something were to happen to them, like, it would be beyond devastating. So, learn to love yourself before anyone else. And, I mean, yeah, I would also just make sure I definitely like underline enjoy the ride, because I've had a great run. I mean, if I go tomorrow, I go tomorrow, like whatever, like I can't fight that. But just, enjoy the ride, which is, to an extent of just stay present and enjoy where you are. Don't focus on things that you can't control.
Those are great quotes. Reminds me of something a longtime mentor used to say to me in the golf business back here where I used to teach, is just like, listen, we're not saving lives here. Okay. We're not doctors. It's just golf. It doesn't fucking matter. You know what? I know we all had a bad day. Let's move on. And, wherever we're seeing that ever prevalent in, where we're at as a society right now, where, golf really doesn't matter. And there are a lot of people out there who are saving lives every day. And, those are the people with the COVID-19 on the front lines. And, so I think it's everybody's taking a bit of a step back. And I just really love that quote of a longtime mentor and boss, and just really puts things into perspective. So really think that was great, and some awesome insight. Ronnie, you got anything else to add here, or I think we've got a lot of Christina's time just under wraps there.
Yeah, thank you very much for your time, Christina. You never hesitated when we called you up and asked if you'd be on our podcast. Casey and I are new at this. You never blinked an eye and said, sure, I'd love to do it. You're very kind and generous with your time. Nobody bleeds LPGA like you do, but we're big fans, and I continue to be a big fan going forward. Just thank you very much for spending some time with us, and let's talk divots.
Of course, I love it. Thank you so much.
And Christina, we hope to get you, I don't know how this social distancing is going to work, but we really hope to get you back into the studio, the on the road studio at some point down the road. And just before we part ways, just I know you've got a huge following, but if we've got any, some new listeners, some new followers, where can they find you? Go ahead.
For me, everything is just at the Christina Kim, TheChristianaKim, across all social media platforms. And I just want to say thank you guys for letting me be, your first guest. It means a lot to me. It really, really does. I am eventually going to venture off. This is something that I've been working on for about 18 months now. I've got a podcast idea of my own that I eventually want to get out in the world. But to be your first guest was really, really special, and I really appreciate it. And you guys are doing awesome, by the way. I listen to a lot of podcasts, so I had an absolute blast.
Appreciate that.
Thanks so much, Christina. I'm going to hit the stop record button. Stay on the line, okay? And good luck. I hope we can see you inside the ropes sooner than later.
Sure, and then let's talk divots.
All right, enjoy the ride.
Ciao, guys.